Welcome everyone, Costin here on Serious Gaming to talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance, one of the latest successful Kickstarter projects. Now, unlike many Kickstarter video games, this one was put there more as a means of determining whether people were interested in playing such a game or not. A realistic medieval RPG set in 1403 in central Bohemia, modern day Czech Republic. Involving the events that led to the kidnapping of the King of Bohemia by Sigismund II of Hungary. So it's a pretty interesting period from a political standpoint, military standpoint, all of that. So it was put there more as a means of determining whether or not people are interested in playing such a game, rather than to actually gain money. Yes, of course they're interested in money, it's going to help their development, but most of the costs are going to be handled by a private investor who is one of the richest men in the Czech Republic, who is not a gamer, but he gave this company, Warhorse, enough money to pay for the initial development costs, with the idea that they would then find a publisher who would pay for the rest. Problem for the developers, Warhorse, is that no publisher was actually interested in taking a risk, as it were, because it's a rather unique game. It's a first-person medieval RPG set in a historical era with no magic. It's a realistic game, or an authentic game. It's not gonna have magic or elves or undead or dragons or anything like that. It's gonna be a realistic RPG. It's not gonna have a customizable protagonist. He's a set character with a set story, set past, even set looks. You're not gonna customize much about him except his facial hair or something like that. You're not gonna be able to play a female character either, because there weren't many women in the Middle Ages that fought on the battlefield, fought in large-scale battles. Yes, there were plenty of women in the Middle Ages that had important roles in history, religious roles, political roles, even military roles, a couple of them, but very, especially with the military ones, very rarely. And this is something I need to stress out, very rare that you would see a woman take an active role in the military during the Middle Ages. It simply did not happen all that much. And I'm glad that the developers are not going to go with female protagonists. Anyway, as I said, the publishers were not interested in this kind of game. They were interested, but they were not willing to take the risk with this kind of game. So that left the developers in a pretty bad situation financially. They did a bunch of surveys and found out that many gamers are actually interested in this kind of game. They collected this data and they went with it to their investor, a private investor, which is one of the richest men in the Czech Republic. He's a billionaire, basically. And they showed them this data and then proposed that they take the game to Kickstarter to also prove to him even further that people are indeed interested in this kind of game. In return, the investor agreed that if the Kickstarter campaign succeeded, which it has, the initial goal was 300,000 British pounds, it reached that in less than 48 hours. In return, he would give them enough money to make the game, which is about 3 million pounds, give or take, which is roughly 5 million United States dollars. The developers at this point for their Kickstarter campaign have earned more than 900,000 pounds. They will likely reach over 1 million, maybe 1,100,000, maybe. There's less than 48 hours to go on the Kickstarter. If the game sounds interesting to you, I'll put the link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video, as well as their YouTube page. They've got a bunch of videos there. They even did a live stream session just a couple hours ago at the moment of recording this video, where they showed off the game, showed off the combat, showed off the cinematics and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty good. A realistic medieval RPG set in a historical era, following historical events. Pretty damn interesting. But I think their Kickstarter could have gone a lot better if their stretch goals had been better, because I look at their stretch goals on their Kickstarter page and they're not really interesting. There are a couple, like 2 or 3, that did pique my interest, like motion capture of faces, of the faces of characters, or actually of the faces of the actors that are doing the voice acting. At the same time they're recording the lines. Now that's gonna lead to having facial animations that are as good as Rise Son of Rome. If you look at that game and you look at the faces in that game, the facial animations, they're pretty damn good. So you're gonna see something similar to that kind of quality. Another example you could give in terms of facial animations, think something like LA Noire in terms of facial animations. Yes, that good. It's gonna be the game is gonna have facial animations that good. You're gonna have. They even talked about motion capture for horses. There's gonna be horse riding. I'm not sure if there's gonna be mounted combat. I think there will be. The goal of the game, the goal of the developers with the game is to combine the storytelling of games like The Witcher or Red Dead Redemption with the difficulty of Dark Souls. And I'll get into the difficulty of Dark Souls, by the way, in just a second. The difficulty of Dark Souls, the large open scale world of Elder Scrolls, of an Elder Scrolls game, that is, and the gameplay of something similar to Mountain Blade. And I've played every single one of those games that they mentioned there, that they list there as inspiration, except Red Dead Redemption, and I can tell you that this has me pretty fucking excited. It's a first-person game, by the way. I was put on the fence by the fact it's first-person because I personally have never played a first-person game that actually did sword combat well. But then I actually saw their sword combat in action in one of their videos, and actually several of their videos, and I was immediately excited. I think they've done a pretty good job. The game right now is obviously in alpha. They're gonna release it maybe even in 2016. They're talking earliest release date would be December of 2015. So it's still 2 years away from us. They're gonna release an alpha version about 6 months, a beta later down the line. I would recommend the Baron tier for those of you that are interested, because you'll get access to the alpha. That's what I've personally gone after. It is a game that has me very excited. The combination of these elements, having a game with the story quality of something like The Witcher, with the difficulty of Dark Souls, and then the gameplay of Mountain Blade, where you have these large-scale open field battles where you're personally involved in, but you can also direct them. Now that's something that has me very interested. One thing I really hope the developers do, I'm not going to talk about what they've said they're going to do, I'll talk about what I hope they would do. Because there are certain things I would like to see in this RPG, certain things that have bothered me in many of the RPGs that I've played over the last couple of years. I would hope for as little story gameplay segregation as possible. I would like to see things in the gameplay, how well you play actually, influence the story. Say for instance you have this large scale battle and you're playing like absolute shit, and that results in a bunch of soldiers on your side dying because you're playing badly. That should have a consequence in the story. Not really perhaps a very big one, but there should be consequences for your gameplay approach, how well you play the game, all these kinds of things. Then there should be story consequences that are shown in the gameplay, how many enemies you fight, who you fight exactly, all these kinds of things. I would like to see that. I would also like the developers to avoid one of the major issues of Dark Souls, because they do list it as an inspiration. And what's one of the major issues of Dark Souls, you might ask? Well, the major issue from my perspective with regards to Dark Souls is that you can get, if you know what you're doing, if you know where the items are in the game, if you know how to build your character, you can get certain items in the game, like the Drake Sword, which you can get very early on in Dark Souls. And you can just dominate entire sections of the game. You can plow through enemies with ease. Now, I do think there should be a point where if you get really powerful, you should be dominating enemies. But I also think that just because you know where items are in the gameplay, you know how to upgrade your items, you know how to build your character, the reward for that shouldn't be that the game becomes piss easy. This is also a problem with The Witcher. By the way, it's also a problem for many RPGs that I've personally played. Surprisingly, it's less of an issue in the BioWare games. I really hate to say it, but yes, it is less of an issue in the BioWare games, specifically Dragon Age 2 or Mass Effect 2 or 3. It's less of an issue than in, say, Witcher 2, where if you build your character right, if you get that dark armor or if you get that red armor, enemies just become a complete cakewalk. And I want to avoid that. Just because I know where, just because I am thinking about how to build my character, just because I'm building my character right that suits my personal playstyle, just because I'm making these armors, all that, my reward should not be to just plow through all the enemies in the game. I also hope there's only one difficulty in the game, and I hope that difficulty requires some actual thought, some skills, reflexes, as well as strategizing, preparation, all that kind of things, all these kinds of things. Some people are going to bitch about this, about what I'm suggesting, because they're going to say, oh, I just only care about the story. Well, yes, I can understand that, but I have to say that having a difficult combat system that requires you to actually put some thought into how you build your character, how you upgrade your character, what kind of armor you're equipping on him, all that kind of stuff, does create a better gameplay experience overall, which enhances the game completely in all aspects, including story. It makes for a better game experience. That's my perspective. Having a difficult game does not make a game worse. Even if you're a terrible player, I understand that this means not everyone's gonna finish the game, but I think that's not a bad thing. I don't think everyone should be able to finish every game, even if they're a terrible player. Other things I would like to see in the game, they have large-scale open field battles. From the videos they've shown, they're gonna involve hundreds of people on each side. Perhaps even more. I don't know how far they can take it. They're using CryEngine 3. It's a pretty versatile engine. They even got contacted by Chris Roberts, who is making Star Citizen. They're gonna be sharing technologies because Chris Roberts is interested in some of the character customization technology that they've made for Kingdom Come, and they're obviously gonna get some technology that Chris Roberts developed for Star Citizen. So it's gonna be interesting there to see how far they can go in terms of large-scale battles. In terms of large-scale battles, I would like to see battles that you can lose. You shouldn't just go to a battle, regardless of the decisions you made, regardless of how well you have prepared or not, and just know that you cannot lose. Take a look at Dragon Age Origins. The entire game is spent building this massive army that you're supposed to use against the Archdemon. But here's the thing that really rubs me the wrong way. Regardless of the decisions you've made, regardless of how much of an idiot you can be, you will never lose the battle. Yes, your character can die in gameplay, your enemies can overpower you, but story-wise, you will never lose that battle, even if you've been a complete dumbass. And you should be able to lose that battle, and there should be consequences to that. I want to see something like that. I want to see preparation for large-scale battles. I don't want to see to just go into a battle and that's it. No, a battle involves a lot more than that. There's preparation, there's logistics, there's tactics, formations, ambushes, deceits, all these kind of things. I would like to see all these things play a role in the battles in Kingdom Come Deliverance. I would like to be able to say, for instance, okay, we have this enemy army that's going to march here at this location, and we're going to have to deal with it. Okay, how do we deal with it? Do we ambush it? Do we engage them in a full open field battle? When do we attack? Is it during the day? Is it during the night? What kind of tactics do we use? How do we deploy our men? Can we send people to raid their supply lines? Can we send spies to be able to discover the enemy battle plans? I would like to see all these kind of elements in the game. I don't want to go to a battle and say, oh, look at you. You're just a random soldier. You have absolutely no control over how the battle is going to play out. None of your previous game decisions influence how this battle is going to play out in any way. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be a general of this army. You can influence a battle just by being a spy, a lowly spy or a lowly soldier that discovers, okay, the enemy battle plans are this, and you take this to some high nobleman, tell him what's going to happen. He may or may not listen to you. You have to convince him of that. And I think you could do that without becoming a general of an army or some high nobleman yourself. And I would like to see that. Or you could just be a knight leading a couple of men that are raiding the enemy supply lines, which means that the enemy is weakened before the battle. One of the things I really liked about what they're doing is they talked about castle sieges. They haven't talked much about open field battles or the castle sieges. In fact, they mentioned that at this point there's no tactical leading gameplay elements in the game right now. Not at this moment. We'll see in the future. But in terms of castle sieges, they talked about different approaches. And this is something that I actually personally proposed with regards to The Witcher 3, because we know politics are obviously going to be a big thing in The Witcher 3. And I was talking about the potential idea of a castle siege in The Witcher 3, and that you could possibly approach the situation from this different points of views. You could, for instance, use stealth to sneak into the castle, and say, for instance, assassinate their commander or open the gates. You can lead the frontal assault, and depending on how well you personally play during that frontal assault, you lose more men or less men, and that should have an impact on the story, because you say, for instance, you lose more men in the castle siege, you'll have less men for the upcoming battle. Things like that. These things should have an impact on the story. I hope they will, but you know, from what they're saying so far, I like what they're doing, but I hope they'll have these elements, because it would make such a wonderful game. I think it's going to be a great game regardless, but I would really like to personally see these elements, and it would be something that no one has really ever done before. In fact, what they're doing is not something that anyone has really done before. Just watching that segment where they're showing what appears to be the Battle of Grunwald, just a large-scale battle, just those lines of infantry, cavalry as well. That's amazing. Like, this game is an alpha, but just looking at that, it's like, you're a soldier. It just basically screams to me, you're a soldier in a Total War game, basically. That's what it screams to me. And this is something that I've personally wanted in games for a very long time. Some would say, oh, Mount & Blade delivers that. Not exactly. Mount & Blade has a bunch of issues. It doesn't really have a story mode. For instance, it's more like make your own story type of thing. It's not really. It's not a game where the developer has control over the story. It's more like make your own story. I think that the developer having control over the story is not necessarily a bad thing. I would like, in terms of story, I would like to have the ability to customize my character's beliefs in terms of who's he gonna work with, who's he gonna treat as a friend or as an enemy, who's he gonna piss off, is he gonna piss them off deliberately or not. You know, something similar to Alpha Protocol. They've already stated that you will not have all the time in the world to make the decisions in the game, so you're gonna have a limited time to make these decisions, which is what we had in Alpha Protocol. Another thing we had in Alpha Protocol is that we could manipulate people. We could side with whoever we wanted to a certain extent. To a certain extent, you didn't have full control over over the way the story went, but you did have control in how you treated people, who are your allies. You could go for the entirety of Alpha Protocol, and out of all the major characters, you could decide to not kill a single one of the major characters. And that's a great way to make an RPG, to not be forced to kill any of the major characters if you so decide for your own personal reasons. And you could manipulate people in that game. You could do actual manipulation. And Michael Fortin, which was a mixture of a Sid character and a Black Slate character, was a great character that the developers used to the maximum. Yes, he was set in terms of his looks. He was a white male, an American soldier, and he was always a new recruit in the Alpha Protocol Black Ops agency. But despite that, you had a lot of choice regards to his perspective on characters, on events, on his motivation. I would like to see that in Kingdom Come Deliverance. And more importantly, I would like to see a rise to power in a sense. Not something in the sense, oh, I'm becoming a military leader, or I'm becoming this high nobleman or anything like that. More like I'm becoming this force in the shadow that is able to influence these noblemen, these kings and queens of Europe, however I want. Because that's what you are able to do in Alpha Protocol. You didn't become a president of a country or the head of an intelligence agency. You worked with heads of intelligence agency, you made allies, you manipulated people, and you formed alliances with various groups. And at the end of the game, if you had played your cards right, you could take down the antagonist, the main opposing force of that game, who is the head of this international corporation that's been manipulating world events for years. And you could take his place and tell him, you think that I need you right now? Because he offers you the chance to join him, and you can just agree to that initially, but then turn them away and tell him, I don't need you anymore. I've made all these alliances, I've built up my cards, and now I can take your place and manipulate the world and then make it however the fuck I want. And that was a fucking brilliant moment in Alpha Protocol. One of the best protagonist moments that I've seen in video game history, were intelligent choices that you've made throughout an entire game. It wasn't just one choice that you made at the ending of the game. No, it was a string of choices that you've made throughout the entire game experience that all added up, leading to that one singular moment where you take over and become that shadowy force manipulating world events. The game itself, in the epilogue text, mentions that your protagonist has become something akin to the hand of God influencing the world. And that's just a perfect way to end an RPG where we have a lot of moral decisions to make, a lot of ways to interact with characters, a lot of choices that impact the world, impact the characters around you. And that's a brilliant way, a brilliant option to have. It's not the only option, and that's the important thing. It's not the only option. There should be multiple ways to play your protagonist. You could play the goody two-shoes or the aggressive evil bastard that just wants to kill people, enjoys killing people or anything like that. There should be consequences for all these paths. There should be very negative outcomes depending on your decisions. Your character should be able to die. You shouldn't be invincible. You should be able to die in a story sense, not just in gameplay, oh, this opponent killed me. No, in a story sense where your character can die. And that's great. That would be a great thing for an RPG. I would really like to see that, and I think the Middle Ages is just a perfect place to have such a protagonist. I don't want to become the head of a military. I don't want to be the knight in shiny armor leading legions of troops across the battlefield to conquer all of Europe. No, that wouldn't be great. What would be great is to become, say, an advisor to nobles, or a shadowy force influencing kings and queens all across Europe, or high noblemen in Bohemia or the Holy Roman Empire. That would be an excellent ending to a great video game, in my opinion. On top of all the things that they're offering us. Even if the game doesn't have all the things I mentioned, I still think the game is going to be pretty fucking excellent. Just my opinion. But this is just, you know, what I would wish of medieval RPGs. This is the kind of game I would like to play, on top of what they're doing with the game already. So we'll see. Kingdom Come Deliverance. I don't think their stretch goals have been pretty interesting, and that's that's one of the main reasons I think they haven't really gained as much money as they probably should have, considering what they're trying to do and the interest they've attracted. Their stretch goals just haven't really been really that good, but I think it makes sense considering that most of the money that they're gonna use to make the game comes from the private investor, not the Kickstarter. So they don't really have ambitious Kickstarter goals, though they have some pretty good ones that they've achieved. Like they're gonna have motion capture of the character faces while the voice acting is recorded. So they're gonna record the face of the voice actor while he's recording the lines, and that's a pretty good thing. In a recent video, they showed off. They had already shown off the combat. They did a live stream where they showed off the dialogue, and what really surprised me wasn't the combat, the visuals or anything like that. I know what the game looked like, how it played. They had already shown that. What surprised me was the way people talked. It was authentic to the medieval era, and that's really surprising because in a lot of games you see people talking very much like people in the modern era do. And it was really shocking in a sense, actually, to just see these characters talk as, well, they were talking in English accents, of course, because the game is going to be in English, not in Czech. Although it might be in Czech, I don't know. It's going to be in English for certain. And they were talking in authentic English accents. The executive producer, I think it is, forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but I think it is the head of the company, whatever. He said that the accents are, the way characters are talking in the game, in the version that he showed, was very Shakespearean. And he's right, he is right. What disappointed me though was that he said it's gonna be more, the way they're gonna talk in the 5 version is gonna be more modern. Please keep it as it is, because it's just great to see that authentic, those authentic accents, the way people are talking, the words they use and all that. I would like to see that quite a bit. But yeah, the game is interesting, and there's less than 48 hours to go on the Kickstarter. I recommend you pledge it. I'd recommend the Baron tier, because you'll get access to the alpha, which is going to come in about 6 months. The alpha is gonna give you an area of the game which is not gonna really be, it's not gonna have the story of the game revealed to you. It's just gonna be more like a playground where you are gonna be able to test various game systems from what they've stated. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm certainly eager to cover this game, though it's gonna come out in over 2 years. Their earliest estimate is December 2015, so I wouldn't expect it until 2016, personally. But that's a good thing. I don't think games should be rushed. I think a good long development cycle for a video game is a great thing. As long as they release it, of course, and they make a high quality product. There's still a lot to go, but the game as it looks right now is amazing. It's gonna have 3 acts. In total, they talked about how the game is going to be over 70 hours long. It's going to be a big game, an open world game with large scale open field battles where you have hundreds of combatants, where you have horse riding, where you have authentic medieval weaponry. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. I really can't wait for it. This has me more excited than Witcher 3 or WildStar. And I'm surprised to say this. This is the first Kickstarter game that I back. I've seen a bunch of Kickstarter games that that I thought interesting, or games that I found interesting that were created thanks to Kickstarter, like Banner Saga, which I really like, or FTL, a game I personally like quite a bit. But this is the first crowdfunded game that I personally support. The other one that I plan on supporting just now, right now, is Star Citizen. I'm gonna wait a bit more with that, but this really has me excited, and I didn't think it would, specifically because it's a first-person game, and I think it would be a good idea, but then I saw the combat system and was like, yeah, I want to play this game. I want to get in and fight my opponents with that kind of speed, with that kind of control over my swings, and I want to play in a game where fighting more than one opponent is more likely to get you killed more often than not. I just hope that they solve some of the issues that games like Dark Souls or The Witcher 2 have in terms of the gameplay, because Dark Souls obviously is one of their main inspiration, but we'll see. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. There's links in the description of this video taking you to their Kickstarter page as well as their YouTube page. I recommend you check those out, especially their YouTube page. They have a bunch of interesting videos there, and there's still a couple more hours to go, over a day to go until the Kickstarter ends, if you're interested in pledging money to this game. Anyway, this has been Costin on Serious Gaming signing out. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more.